Richard Engelbert was a 48-year-old man living in Littleton, Colorado. He was a well-known real estate agent in the community, often seen driving around in his sleek black BMW with a license plate sexy realtor, showing homes to clients. Richard was married to Wendy, a school principal, and had a stepson named Harrison. He graduated from the University of Colorado with a degree in business and had been in the real estate business for over 20 years. People in Littleton trusted Richard because he always seemed friendly and reliable. Richard lived in a large two-story house with a well-manicured lawn. His neighbors often saw him working in the yard, greeting them with a warm smile and a wave. He was involved in local events and charity fundraisers, often sponsoring local Little League teams and attending church on Sundays. Richard seemed to have the perfect life, with a beautiful home, a successful career, and a loving family. However, Richard had a secret life. For the past 2 years, he had been in a sexual relationship with his stepson, Harrison. Richard kept this relationship hidden from everyone, fearing it would ruin his reputation and career. In addition to this, he continued to meet other men for sex through his work, using the homes he showed as secret meeting places. These double lives created a lot of stress and tension for Richard. In the days before his death, Richard was busy with work, closing deals, and meeting clients. He spent long hours at the office and often came home late. He was looking forward to a weekend getaway to the Bahamas with his wife Wendy, hoping to relax and forget about his troubles for a while. Richard was also planning to attend a 4th of July barbecue at a friend's house, where he expected to catch up with old friends and enjoy some time away from his hectic life. Richard's friends described him as charismatic and charming. He had a way of making people feel comfortable and important. Despite his friendly exterior, Richard was deeply troubled by his hidden life. He felt guilty about his affair with Harrison and the lies he told to keep it a secret. He was also worried about Wendy finding out, fearing it would destroy their marriage and his standing in the community. In his last days, Richard was a man under pressure, trying to juggle his public persona with this private turmoil. His dreams of a perfect life were slowly unraveling, leading to a tragic and violent end. On June 27, 2014, around 3:00 p.m., Wendy Engelbert returned early from her job as a school principal. She was looking forward to a relaxing evening, maybe watching some shows on Netflix and catching up on her favorite book. As she walked through the front door of their house on Bleak Street in Littleton, Colorado, everything seemed normal at first. She put her keys on the kitchen counter and called out for Richard, but there was no answer. Feeling a bit uneasy, Wendy decided to check the basement where Richard often spent time working on his real estate files or watching the History Channel. As she descended the stairs, she noticed that the basement door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. She called his name again, louder this time, but still no response. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, she was met with a scene of horror. Richard's lifeless body was sprawled on the floor, surrounded by signs of a violent struggle. There were bloodstains on the carpet and furniture, and Richard's face was bruised and battered. A men's luxury belt was wrapped tightly around his neck, clearly used to choke him to death. Wendy screamed in terror and rushed to her husband's side, shaking him and desperately trying to wake him up. But it was too late. In a state of shock and disbelief, Wendy grabbed her cell phone and dialed 911. Her hands trembled as she spoke to the operator, her voice cracking with emotion. "My husband is dead. I think he's been murdered," she cried, struggling to catch her breath. The operator tried to calm her down and instructed her to stay on the line until the police arrived. Wendy's neighbor, Luby Johnson-Gantz, heard the commotion and came over to see what was happening. She found Wendy sitting on the front steps, sobbing uncontrollably. Luby stayed with Wendy, trying to comfort her while they waited for the police. The minutes felt like hours, and Wendy's mind raced with questions about who could have done this and why. When the police finally arrived, they quickly secured the scene and escorted Wendy and Luby away from the basement. Wendy was in a state of shock, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. She kept repeating, "Who would do this to Richard?" over and over again, her mind unable to process the brutal reality of her husband's death. The discovery of Richard's body sent shockwaves through the quiet community of Littleton. News of the murder spread quickly, with neighbors and friends gathering outside the Engelbert home, trying to make sense of the tragedy that had struck their seemingly perfect neighborhood. On June 27, 2014, at 3:15 p.m., the Littleton Police Department received a frantic 911 call from Wendy Engelbert. Officers arrived at the scene within minutes, led by Detective James Cabell, a seasoned investigator known for his meticulous approach. The Engelbert home, located on the quiet Oak Street, was quickly surrounded by police cars, and yellow crime scene tape was stretched around the perimeter. Detective Cattle and his team entered the basement, where they were confronted with a grisly scene. Richard Engelbert's body lay on the floor, with a men's luxury belt wrapped tightly around his neck. Bloodstains were visible on the carpet and nearby furniture, indicating a violent struggle. Detective Cattle, a spry man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, took in the scene with a steely resolve. The police began their investigation by collecting evidence. They photographed the scene from various angles, documenting every detail. The belt used in the murder was carefully bagged as evidence, and detectives searched for fingerprints and any other clues that might lead to the killer. Detective Cattle noted the overturned furniture and signs of a struggle, indicating that Richard had fought for his life. Forensic experts arrived to process the scene, using luminol to detect blood traces and collecting samples for DNA analysis. They meticulously combed the area for hair, fibers, and any other potential evidence. The brutality of the murder shocked even the most experienced officers, but they remained focused on gathering all the information they could. Detective Cattle interviewed Wendy Engelbert, who was still in shock from discovering her husband's body. She described her day and the horrifying moment she found Richard. Her account was detailed and emotional, but she insisted she had no idea who could have done this. Wendy's alibi was quickly verified, as she had been at work at the time of the murder. Next, the police began canvassing the neighborhood. They spoke with neighbors, including Luby Johnson-Gantz, who had come to Wendy's aid. Sarah described hearing Wendy's screams and finding her on the front steps, distraught and incoherent. Other neighbors mentioned seeing Richard earlier in the day, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The police also checked Richard's recent phone and email records, hoping to find any leads. They discovered several suspicious messages and calls, suggesting that Richard had been meeting with various men for illicit sex. This revelation added a new layer to the investigation, pointing to potential motives related to Richard's hidden life. As the day turned into evening, the police continued their work, determined to find the person responsible for Richard Engelbert's brutal murder. The scene was cleared, and Detective Cattle and his team reviewed the evidence collected, preparing for the next steps in their investigation. The community of Littleton watched anxiously, hoping for answers and justice for Richard Engelbert. The first suspect in Richard Engelbert's murder was his wife, Wendy Engelbert. Wendy, 47, was a respected school principal in Littleton, known for her intelligence and strong personality. She had been with the school district for over 15 years and was heavily involved in community activities. Her colleagues described her as dedicated and authoritative, always striving for excellence. Wendy was brought in for questioning the day after the murder, on June 28, 2014. Detective James Cattle led the interrogation, trying to piece together her actions and emotions. Wendy appeared exhausted and distraught, but she answered questions calmly. She recounted her day at work and the horrifying discovery of Richard's body when she returned home. Despite her composed demeanor, Wendy's anger and confusion were evident. She expressed disbelief and frustration over the affair, insisting she had no idea Richard was sexually involved with other men. The revelation of the affair added tension to the interrogation, as Detective Cattle probed deeper into Wendy's feelings about her husband's betrayal. Detective Cattle asked Wendy about her relationship with Richard. She admitted they had a strong partnership, but mentioned that they had faced some challenges recently. Wendy claimed she was unaware of Richard's secret life. She explained she had recent ski injury which had caused her difficulty in reading people's actions, and suggested this might be why she missed any signs of Richard's double life. Wendy's alibi was solid. She had been at the school all day, attending meetings and preparing for the upcoming school year. Colleagues and security footage confirmed her presence at work during the time of the murder. Nonetheless, her connection to the victim made her a person of interest. Detective Cattle also explored Wendy's possible motives. Her reputation and career were crucial to her, and Richard's affair threatened both. However, Wendy firmly denied any involvement in the murder, maintaining her innocence throughout the questioning. She was cooperative and provided all requested information, including access to her phone and emails. The police conducted a thorough search of the Engelbert home, looking for any evidence that might link Wendy to the crime. They found nothing incriminating, reinforcing her alibi and statements. Still, the detectives remained cautious, aware that emotions could drive even the most rational individuals to commit desperate acts. Wendy was released after several hours of questioning, but she remained under scrutiny as the investigation continued. The police kept a close watch on her, monitoring her interactions and movements while they explored other leads. The murder of Richard Engelbert was proving to be a complex case, with layers of secrets and motives slowly unraveling. Harrison Engelbert, Richard's 21-year-old stepson, was the next suspect. Harrison was a college student and part-time bartender, known for his troubled past. He had been in and out of rehab and 12-step programs as a teenager. Despite these challenges, Harrison was determined to turn his life around and was pursuing a degree in psychology at a local community college. On June 28, 2014, Harrison was brought in for questioning. Detective James Cattle, aware of the sensitive nature of Harrison's relationship with Richard, approached the interrogation with caution. Harrison appeared nervous but cooperative, willing to share his side of the story. Harrison admitted to the police that he had been in a secret sexual relationship with his stepfather for the past 2 years. He described feeling conflicted, struggling with the deceit and secrecy. Harrison revealed that he had recently broken off the affair after discovering that Richard had been cheating on him with dozens of other men, using homes he showed as a real estate agent as secret meeting places. During the interrogation, Harrison expressed a mix of anger and sadness. He felt betrayed by Richard, not only because of the affair but also because of the lies and manipulation. Despite his resentment, Harrison claimed he had no intention of harming Richard. He stated that he had been bartending on the night of the murder, and several witnesses confirmed his alibi. Detective Cattle delved deeper into Harrison's possible motives. The young man's history of emotional turmoil and substance abuse raised concerns, but his recent efforts to stay sober and focused on his studies painted a different picture. Harrison was open about his struggles and his desire to move forward, away from the toxic relationship with Richard. The police also examined Harrison's electronic devices and social media accounts, looking for any evidence of his involvement in the crime. They found messages between him and Richard that showed tension and conflict, but nothing that directly implicated him in the murder. Harrison's DNA was found at the crime scene, but as he lived in the house, this was not unexpected. Harrison's cooperation and consistent alibi made it difficult for the police to pin the crime on him. He was released after several hours of questioning, but he remained a key figure in the investigation. The police continued to monitor his activities and interactions, searching for any inconsistencies or new evidence that might shed light on his involvement. The complex dynamics between Richard and Harrison added a layer of complexity to the case, leaving Detective Cattle and his team with more questions than answers. As they continued to dig deeper, they hoped to uncover the truth behind Richard Engelbert's brutal murder. Alexa Hernandez, 30, was the third suspect in the investigation. Alexa had a history with Richard Engelbert that made her a person of interest. She had once caught Richard having sex with her husband in the bathroom of a house they were touring together, which led to the end of her marriage. Known for her fiery temper, Alexa had several confrontations with Richard since the incident. On June 29, 2014, Detective James Cattle brought Alexa in for questioning. Alexa was a waitress at a popular local diner and had a reputation for being outspoken and strong-willed. She walked into the interrogation room with a defiant expression, ready to defend herself. Detective Cattle started by asking Alexa about her relationship with Richard. She admitted that she despised him for ruining her marriage and causing her immense emotional pain. Alexa described the day she discovered her husband and Richard together as the worst day of her life. She had confronted Richard several times after that, demanding answers and an apology, but he had always brushed her off. When asked about her whereabouts on the day of the murder, Alexa said she had been working a double shift at a diner called Denny's. She provided the names of her coworkers who could verify her alibi. Detective Cattle called the diner and spoke with Alexa's manager, who confirmed that Alexa had been at work all day. Multiple coworkers also confirmed seeing her during her shifts. Despite her solid alibi, Detective Cattle explored Alexa's possible motives further. Her intense anger toward Richard was evident, but she insisted she had moved on and was focusing on rebuilding her life. Alexa shared that she was taking night classes at a local community college, hoping to become a social worker and help others who had gone through similar struggles. The police searched Alexa's home and car, looking for any evidence that might link her to the crime. They found nothing suspicious or incriminating. Alexa's phone records and social media activity showed no contact with Richard in the weeks leading up to the murder. Throughout the interrogation, Alexa remained calm and composed, despite her obvious disdain for Richard. She answered all questions directly and showed no signs of guilt or deception. Detective Cattle noted her cooperation and honesty, but knew they had to keep all possibilities open. After several hours of questioning, Alexa was released. The police continued to monitor her, aware that her past with Richard made her a potential suspect. However, her alibi and lack of evidence made it difficult to tie her to the crime directly. The investigation into Richard Engelbert's murder grew more complex with each interview. Detective Cattle and his team were determined to uncover the truth, but the web of secrets and lies surrounding Richard's life made their task increasingly challenging. They pressed on, hoping to find the piece of evidence that would finally reveal the killer. On July 3, 2014, the investigation took a dramatic turn. It was a hot summer day in Littleton, Colorado, with temperatures reaching the high 80s. Around 10 o'clock a.m., Detective James Cattle received a call from the forensic lab. They had found crucial new evidence while re-examining items from the crime scene. Among Richard Engelbert's belongings was a small hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector installed in the basement. Detective Cattle and his team immediately retrieved the footage. The camera had recorded the basement's activities for the past few weeks, capturing Richard's secret meetings and interactions. As they reviewed the footage, they discovered a recording from the day of the murder. The video showed a heated argument between Richard and his stepson, Harrison Engelbert. The argument quickly escalated into a physical struggle. In the video, Harrison grabbed the luxury belt from a nearby chair and used it to choke Richard in a fit of rage. The footage captured the entire incident, providing undeniable evidence of Harrison's involvement in the murder. The team was shocked by the brutality and clear motive behind the act: anger and betrayal. With this new evidence, Detective Cattle contacted Harrison and asked him to come in for further questioning. Harrison arrived at the station, unaware of the video evidence against him. During the interrogation, Cattle confronted him with the footage. Harrison's demeanor changed instantly. His initial calmness turned to panic and desperation. Realizing he had been caught, Harrison broke down and confessed. He explained that he felt trapped in the relationship with Richard, manipulated by both his stepfather and his mother, Wendy. The constant deceit and Richard's infidelity had pushed him to his breaking point. Harrison admitted that, in a moment of uncontrollable rage, he had killed Richard to free himself from the suffocating situation. Detective Cattle carefully documented Harrison's confession, ensuring every detail was recorded. The new evidence, combined with the confession, left no doubt about Harrison's guilt. The police now had a clear picture of the events leading up to Richard Engelbert's murder and the complex web of secrets and lies that had surrounded the case. On July 4, 2014, just before noon, the Littleton Police Department made a decisive move. With Harrison Engelbert's confession and the incriminating video evidence, Detective James Cattle and his team were ready to arrest him for the murder of Richard Engelbert. Harrison, 21, a college student and part-time bartender, had been living a life of turmoil and confusion. Despite his attempts to overcome his troubled past, the intense emotional pressure from his affair with his stepfather and his mother's manipulations had driven him to a breaking point. The police learned that Harrison, overwhelmed by feelings of betrayal and manipulation, had killed Richard in a fit of rage. On the day of the arrest, Detective Cattle and several officers arrived at Harrison's apartment. They knocked on the door, and Harrison, looking pale and exhausted, answered. He was handcuffed and read his rights. Harrison seemed resigned to his fate, showing little emotion as he was led to the police car. The neighborhood was quiet, but a few curious onlookers watched as the scene unfolded. Back at the station, Harrison was formally charged with the murder of Richard Engelbert. Detective Cattle conducted a final interview to document all the details of Harrison's confession. Harrison reiterated his feelings of being trapped and manipulated by Richard and pressured by his mother, Wendy. He described the events leading up to the murder, including the violent argument that had escalated into the fatal attack. Wendy Engelbert, Richard's wife and Harrison's mother, was also brought in for questioning. The investigation had revealed that Wendy had known about the affair for months and had pressured Harrison to continue it. She feared that Richard's reckless sexual behavior would ruin her chances in the upcoming election for school superintendent. Wendy, however, was not directly involved in the murder. Her deception and manipulation added a layer of complexity to the case, but she was not charged with any crime. Richard's family was shocked by the revelations. They had seen Richard as a devoted husband and father, unaware of his double life. The arrest of Harrison brought a mix of emotions: grief for Richard's death, anger at the betrayal, and a sense of tragic inevitability given the circumstances. The community of Littleton was stunned by the news. The murder had exposed a hidden world of secrets and lies, shaking the town to its core. As Harrison awaited trial, the Engelbert family and the entire community tried to come to terms with the shocking events that had unfolded. The police had solved the case, but the emotional aftermath would linger for a long time. The truth about Richard's life and death had been revealed, but the scars left behind would take much longer to heal. The trial of Harrison Engelbert began on August 15, 2014 in Littleton, Colorado. The courtroom was filled with family, friends, and local media, all eager to hear the details of the case. The trial was a significant event in the community, drawing attention from both local and national news outlets. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Laura Mitchell, a 45-year-old known for her strong courtroom presence and dedication to justice. She argued that Harrison's murder of Richard Engelbert was premeditated and driven by deep-seated anger and betrayal. She presented the hidden camera footage and Harrison's confession as key evidence. Mitchell emphasized that Harrison's actions were the result of a troubled and volatile relationship, but ultimately, he was responsible for the brutal death of his stepfather. The defense was represented by non-binary advocate Z. Barnes, a 40-year-old attorney with a reputation for defending high-profile cases. Barnes argued that Harrison's actions were the result of intense emotional turmoil and manipulation from both Richard and his mother, Wendy. They claimed that Harrison's unstable mental state and the pressure he faced made it difficult for him to control his actions. Barnes sought a verdict of guilty but with consideration for a lesser charge, hoping for a more lenient sentence due to the circumstances. During the trial, the victim's family, including Wendy Engelbert and other relatives, sat quietly, visibly distressed by the proceedings. They had been shocked by the revelations of Richard's double life and the turmoil it had caused. Their emotional reactions were palpable as they listened to the details of the affair and the murder. On September 5, 2014, the jury returned with a verdict. Harrison Engelbert was found guilty of second-degree murder. The jury determined that while Harrison had acted in a fit of rage, the killing was not premeditated. The decision was met with mixed reactions. Some felt the verdict was just, given the emotional and psychological factors involved. Others felt it was too lenient, given the brutality of the crime. Harrison was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing brought a sense of closure to the case, but the pain and trauma for Richard's family were far from over. The Engelbert family struggled to find peace, knowing that Richard's death had been caused by someone so close to them. The trial's impact extended beyond the courtroom. It forced the community to confront the hidden realities of betrayal and manipulation, leaving a lasting mark on Littleton. As the case concluded, the Engelbert family and the town of Littleton began the difficult process of healing from the shocking events that had unfolded. After the trial of Harrison Engelbert concluded in September 2014, life in Littleton, Colorado, slowly began to return to normal, but the impact of the case lingered. The community, deeply shaken by the brutal murder of Richard Engelbert and the subsequent revelations, faced a long process of healing and adjustment. Harrison Engelbert, now serving a 25-year prison sentence, remained in the Colorado Department of Corrections. His life behind bars was marked by the same struggles he faced outside, dealing with his own emotions and the consequences of his actions. In prison, Harrison was reportedly quiet and withdrawn, focusing on completing his education through available programs. He used the time to reflect on his past decisions and seek counseling for his emotional issues. Wendy Engelbert, Richard's wife, had her own challenges to face. The trial had exposed her knowledge of Richard's affair and her manipulative actions, which had a significant impact on her personal and professional life. The scandal affected her candidacy for school superintendent, a position she had been campaigning for diligently. Despite her previous efforts to present a perfect image, the revelations led to her withdrawal from the race. Wendy tried to rebuild her life away from the public eye, seeking therapy to cope with the emotional fallout and to address the impact of the scandal on her reputation. In the months following the trial, Littleton began to move forward, though the scars of the case remained. The community held memorials and support events to honor Richard Engelbert's memory and to support those affected by the crime. The Engelbert family's tragedy served as a sobering reminder of the hidden struggles that can lie behind closed doors. As life resumed its normal pace, the case remained a poignant chapter in Littleton's history, a reminder of the deep impact of betrayal and violence on individuals and communities alike. The story of Richard Engelbert's murder is a tragic reminder of the complexities and hidden secrets that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives. It's a tale of manipulation, deceit, and the devastating consequences of living a double life. Thank you for joining us.